Hey Booktube, it's Shelly and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be talking all about Jane Austen. But before we talk about Jane Austen, I want to tag Justin from This Just In for the effed up book tag. Considering his long history of reading horror and just his tastes in general, I think he is the perfect booktuber for the effed up book tag. I will link or in the cards put my book tag video there so you can watch that, my version of the tag. Anyways, let's go ahead and talk about Jane Austen. Okay, I'm going to try and do this video as story time as possible, so that you all get to know some of my history with Jane Austen, and I'll tell you about my month-long project, and you'll get to know maybe where I stand about Jane Austen, and you can give me all of your good Austen vibes, and you can send them my way. Okay, so where do I start? When I was a young girl, I had friends who I now know today were Janeites. I didn't realize y'all had a name, but Janeites, I definitely had friends that loved Jane Austen. They watched the original or the really good BBC adaptation of Pride and Prejudice with Colin Firth. They were huge fans of that. And there was a group of girls that read Jane Austen and watched Jane Austen and had this love for Jane Austen. I was not one of those girls. I always kind of assumed that maybe Jane Austen wasn't for me, that she was over my head, or that I just didn't get her quips or her wittiness, or that I didn't appreciate her writing. So fast forward to college. I took in undergraduate school English literature course, as most everyone in my major did, and we read Jane Austen's Northanger Abbey in probably my favorite class to date. The professor was a incredibly smart, funny, and fun, dynamic teacher. And not only did he have this wonderful energy, but he really got us thinking. Like, he wasn't afraid to pause, my professor in the class, and listen to us fumble through the answers. And so I read it, and I don't even really remember my assessment of it. It didn't stand out. Maybe, I don't know. So that was my first reading really into Jane Austen. So the class is over. This is like my first year as an English major. Jump ahead a couple of years, and I am in my senior year. And in my senior year, we have some options. We can take our final semester. We can choose in our. I don't want to cut too much, so I'm like trying to do this all in one long take. So in our final semester, we could focus on a very specific genre of English, and or we could focus in on an author depending on what was offered that semester. So Jane Austen, a whole class on Jane Austen and her writing and how it ties with femininity, and it's with my favorite professor. And then on the other side, there was this magical realism class that was taught by a teacher that I had never taken before. And y'all, I chose the magical realism class. I didn't want to read any more Jane Austen. So yeah, that was like one strike against her. Then fast forward a couple of years, and I tried Jane Austen on again. I decide that I want to listen to one of her books. I'm really into expanding my reading more into classics, and I'm reading a lot more independently at this point. I'm also working at the public library, and I was like, okay, I need to get on the Austen train. She's like that cool girl in school that everybody thinks is so amazing, and everyone's like, Jane Austen is so witty and so brilliant and so sharp, and she's just so amazing, and she's my favorite, and on and on. And I'm over here in the back of the class, and I'm like, I kind of think she's overrated. Like, she's not that great, and she's not that witty, and I just don't understand why everybody is going gaga over her. But even though I'm having all of those feelings and that's my inner dialogue, there's also this other part that's like, I want to join the club. I want to like her. And we'll get more into that in just a minute. Okay, so I'm working at the public library, and I love my job, and it's great. And I decide to listen to Pride and Prejudice on audiobook. And it was good. I thought it was good. It was the first time that I really liked Jane Austen. I was like, okay, I can, she's okay. But then that was it. I was like, I read her most famous work. I guess I'm done with Jane Austen. So I don't think about Jane Austen at all for months and months and months and years and years and years. And then I discovered something called BookTube, and this is just a month ago, y'all. And all of a sudden in my feed, there are these videos that are like Jane July. And I'm like, oh, Janeites, they exist. They're here on the YouTube. And okay, so anyways, everyone's videos are popping up. I feel like I should wrap this up. Everyone's videos are popping up, and I'm like, I want to be a Janeite. I want to be one of those people that love Jane Austen, that love her work, that have read all of her work. And so just this last Saturday, I am talking with my husband, and the whole day I'm like, I don't know. I don't know if I want to participate in Jane Austen July. I don't know. I don't think that's for me. And he's like, okay, cool. That's fine. I'm like, okay, well, okay. But I'm kind of thinking about it. Maybe I'll read a book. The day goes on, and I was like, you know what? I think I might want to do Jane Austen July. He's like, okay. And then by the end of the day, I'm like, I read Steve Donahue's blog. He's got Jane Austen picks, and I'm really into Steve Donahue right now. And I think I'm going to do Jane Austen July. And he was like, okay, for him, it's nothing. But for me, I'm like, this is what I'm going to do. So my project is to participate in Jane Austen July as fully and immersively as possible, so that I'm not that girl in the back of the room, like smugging Jane Austen and thinking she's overrated. I want to change my mind. And so I'm gonna give myself the month to try to work on it. And so without any further rambling or any further story time, this here is how I'm going to participate in Jane Austen July. Y'all, this is real life. I started dinner, my husband came home, and now I'm back to film what I'm going to be doing for Jane Austen July. So if you don't know what Jane Austen July is, it is a month-long reading marathon that celebrates Jane Austen's work, her life, and her time, really. And there are 3 YouTube hosts who have put on this reading marathon challenge. The hosts are Katie from Blatantly Bookish, Marissa from, I got this wrong. It's from Katie from Books and Things, Marissa from Blatantly Bookish, and Claudia from Spencer's Library. This is all new to me. This is my first year participating in everything. But those three ladies are hosting, and there's going to be a huge foray of videos all celebrating Jane Austen. And they have challenges. There are several challenges that you can partake in. So let me go through the challenges and tell you what I am going to be doing for Jane Austen July, and really working on growing a fondness and an appreciation for Jane Austen. Okay, challenge number 1 is to read one of Jane Austen's main 6 novels. I chose Persuasion. I chose this because there is a read-along with it, so I know the 3 channels that are hosting are also hosting read-alongs, and Persuasion was one of the choices. The read-along is at the last 10 days of July. I'm going to start this much earlier. I think this will be the only Austen novel that I will dive into. And I'm excited. I actually saw Brian from Bookish mention this randomly, and he said it was really good, and I believe him, and I want to dive in. Challenge number 2 is to read something by Jane Austen that is not one of her main 6 novels. My plan is to read Lady Susan. I heard it was good. I am actually planning on listening to it. I don't know much about it, but I could always use some potentially curmudgeoned old ladies in my life. Challenge number 3, read a nonfiction work about Jane or her time. So I chose Jane Austen, A Life by Claire Tomalin. Kelly from Books I'm Not Reading said that this was one of her favorite books that she read last year, I believe. She said it was really, really good. Yeah. I also, because I've been on the Steve Donahue train, he mentioned Claire Tomalin having a new biography coming out, and and he said that she was a really fast-paced writer and a good writer, and he was interested in her new novel. And so if he had high praise to say about her, I figured this would be a good book and a solid author too for the book. Yeah, Steve Donahue, he gets in your head, y'all. He gets in your head. Okay. Not that it's a bad thing. He just does. He's living there rent-free right now. Okay, a retelling of a Jane Austen book. Okay, it's not a retelling, but it is a retelling of her life of sorts, and that is Miss Austen by Gill Hornby. Again, the Steve Donahue train, I Googled or I searched on his website for Jane Austen, and this came up as one of the best books of its year for historical fiction. Y'all, I know. Plus, I've also watched other TBR videos that have mentioned this and this book, and I really wanted to give it a try, so I'm excited about that one. All right. Read a work by a contemporary of Jane Austen. I don't really think I'm going to do that. If I do read more Jane Austen, I'm actually interested in reading Pride and Prejudice because I have listened to it. All right. Challenge number 6. Watch a direct screen adaptation of a Jane Austen book. So I grew up watching Sense and Sensibility with Emma Thompson and Kate Winslet, and I really want to revisit that film. It's been years since I've watched it, but it's one that my mom and my sisters and I, we all sat around and watched, and yeah, I'm ready to revisit that one. And then the last challenge is watch a modern screen adaptation of a Jane Austen book. I didn't know that Bridget Jones' Diary was an adaptation of a Jane Austen book, but I think it's Sina from Books and Things mentioned it, and so now that's on my radar. I haven't watched Bridget Jones' Diary in some time, and maybe it's time to watch that. I also didn't know that Clueless is a Jane Austen screen adaptation or book adaptation. I had no idea. And I didn't grow up watching Clueless, so I think I've maybe watched it once and I didn't pay very good attention to it. So if I revisit Clueless, I wouldn't be mad about it. So those are the two potential things I'm gonna watch. So that's everything that I'm gonna be reading. Of course, my overarching project for the month is to open my heart to Jane Austen, to grow a deeper or have a deeper appreciation for her work and her place in the canon in literature, and to understand her brilliance more, and to really, know it for myself in my heart that that Jane Austen is amazing. Like I want to like her, y'all. Like I really want to like her. So that's it. Please send Janeites, send all your Jane Austen good vibes my way. I'm gonna need them. Maybe not, but I feel like I'm gonna need them. And let's rally. I might do a check-in in a couple of weeks telling you how my project is going. And I will definitely wrap up or do a check-in at the end of the month to let you know what happened and if my my relationship with Jane Austen has changed in some way. So I'm interested. I hope you will stick around for the ride. And thank you so much, so much for being here. I really, really appreciate it. And I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful day. And I will see you in my next one. Bye, guys.